Chapter 3, 24 Hours in Nowhere, 7 o'clock p.m. Okay, I wasn't a stupid person. No, really, I wasn't. I know this is hard to believe, especially after what I just did, but I was actually the smartest person in my school. I knew this because my 5th grade teacher pulled me aside before we did our state testing to let me know I had the highest scores in the entire school. And I should really be in honors courses, but Nowhere Elementary had no honors courses. So yeah, congratulations on being so smart. Then she had gripped my shoulder so hard it hurt and whispered something to me I've never forgotten. Your only hope, Gus, is the SAT. Do you hear me? I had nodded. At the time, I had no clue what the SAT was. The first thing that had popped into my mind was some top secret organization that might kidnap me out of nowhere, which would have been completely awesome. But the SAT is nowhere near that exciting. Your only hope, she repeated. I understood now what my 5th grade teacher had meant. In 1 year, I would be attending a high school with the lowest graduation rate in the country. No honors courses, and no extracurricular activities. My only hope for getting out of nowhere was to ace the SAT, the standardized test used for college admission. So despite not being a stupid person, going into Dead Frenchman Mine was a really, really stupid thing to do. Was all this worth risking my life? I thought about Rossi shoving Loretta into Beau's hands, of the look on her face when Beau rode off on her bike. Yeah, it was definitely worth it. Because equity, fairness, justness. Did I mention there was a vocabulary section on the SAT? Someone had to fight for justice in nowhere, so it might as well be me. It kind of made me feel like a superhero, a horribly undersized superhero, like Ant-Man, but without the strength or skill. So yeah, an unskilled, weak, undersized superhero. The sun was setting as I made my way back to town. There were other mines around nowhere. I could even see Goldtooth Mine off in the hazy distance. They had only mined enough gold out of it to make one gold tooth. There was also Darn Woman Mine, so named because a darn woman stated the claim and mined a whole lot more out of it than a gold tooth's worth, causing every man within 50 miles to propose marriage to her. As far as I knew, she died very rich and very single. Why hadn't Beau asked me to go into one of those mines? I knew why, because Dead Frenchman was the most dangerous. He probably figured I'd wimp out, or worse. While lost in my thoughts, my feet automatically carried me to Racetrack Basin, a place I visited nearly every day over the summer. I stood on a small hill at the edge of the basin and watched the last few stragglers racing the tracks, trails of pale desert dust following them like giant phantom snakes. I knew they were all hoping they would finally beat Rossi tomorrow. If I failed in my mission, they would. No one else in the Sonoran Desert was crazy enough to race motorcycles in August. Only the kids in nowhere were that reckless and bored. Nobody's parents seemed to care all that much either. If a kid fainted and crashed or died of heat stroke, oh well, that was the risk you took. Collateral damage in the quest to make life suck just a little less. Tomorrow was the most important race of the summer, the race that would determine once and for all who the best racer in nowhere was. Beau had won the last 2 summers, and Rossi had been the first person to challenge him when she showed up this year. According to the leaderboards in the motorcycle shop, whoever won tomorrow would take the summer. I knew Rossi would win if she could get Loretta back. Everyone was shocked this year when it was announced that a mysterious sponsor had donated a brand new dirt bike for the winner. Not only that, but the winner would get to go to a special camp at world-famous Breaker Bradley's motocross training facility, which was owned by the legendary Breaker himself. No prize had ever been offered like that before. Last year's winner was awarded a year of free popsicles from the Nowhere Market and Ostrich Farm, but even that had been a step up from the previous year's prize, a $10 gift certificate to the scrapyard. I heard Beau got a few lug nuts and a rusty crowbar out of it. The sky turned from pink to purple as he gazed out at the racers. One of the riders aided on a jump, rolling end over end through the dirt. I was glad to see him get up. He seemed okay. I watched as the others turned a corner and hit the silt, one of them getting stuck, another toppling from something hidden underneath the powder. Racetrack Basin was a brutal track, mostly because it just wasn't maintained very well, or really at all. It may very well have been the most rutted track in the world. Over the years, hundreds of bored nowhere kids had turned Racetrack Basin into quite a track, though. Young hands had transformed the flat, dry lake bed into whoops and jumps and sharp turns and berms and dips. It was extremely large. The entire course nearly 2 miles, twice as long as the average dirt bike track. That also meant it was difficult to see the riders when they were at the farthest point from the starting line, which was why I liked to sit up on the small hill on the far side of the track to watch the races. Another rider turned a corner and accidentally hit the loose silt, sending up a giant dust cloud. He slowed way down and got stuck. Racetrack Basin was littered with silt pockets because it was dry lake bed. The track that everyone stuck to was well competed due to all the riding, but everywhere around the track were deep areas of loose silt that were near impossible to ride through. If you were stuck behind a bunch of riders with nowhere to pass, you didn't attempt to pass in the silt. Everyone avoided the silt, even Rossi. I sighed as I gazed out at the riders. In a town where dirt bike racing was everything, not being a racer definitely made me a loser. I continued on my way to the Nowhere Market and Ostrich Farm as the sky darkened and the air turned from scorching to stifling. the strange booming sounds of ostriches getting louder with every step. Now here's something important to know about nowhere. About 90% of the people who lived here have no choice. They're trapped. No money, no education, no family, trapped. Like me. They would leave if they could, but the other 10% of people, these people have chosen to live in nowhere. And these are the people I like to call weirdos. The owner of the Nowhere Market and Ostrich Farm, Mayor Handsome, definitely qualified as a full-fledged weirdo. After I gulped down a massive amount of hot water from the rusty drinking fountain out on the front porch, I opened the door to the store, my belly burning. The bell jingled. Despite being the only grocery store in town, the Nowhere Market and Ostrich Farm had very limited supplies. Some shelves of canned food, the adult diapers my grandma wore and made me buy often when other people were there to watch, toilet paper, common house tools, the very basics. Oh, also shrimp. I had no idea where Mayor Handsome got the fresh shrimp he sold. He claimed they were fresh, because I've never seen anyone delivering shrimp to the store. I once asked him what kind of shrimp they were. Tasty shrimp, he had said. I asked him where they had come from. From Die Vater, was his reply. The only water in Nowhere was the kind that came out of the faucet or got flushed down the toilet, so that was a little alarming. I guess there had been a lake here a long time ago, in Racetrack Basin, I heard, but it had dried up so many years ago, no one knew for sure when. We were in the middle of a decades-long drought and hardly ever saw rain, and certainly not enough rain to fill an entire basin. You need diapers, Gus? Asked Mayor Handsome, appearing from the back room. He put down his bucket of ostrich feed. You wouldn't expect to find an ostrich farm in the middle of the desert, but here it was, right in the back of the Nowhere Market and Ostrich Farm. For $5, tourists could pet and feed the ostriches. It was a good thing Mayor Handsome didn't depend on tourists to feed his ostriches, though, because they'd have starved to death years ago. Mayor Handsome was definitely the most successful person in Nowhere. Not only did he own the Nowhere Market and Ostrich Farm, he was also the mayor, apparently. At least I thought he was. Everyone called him Mayor Handsome, but I suppose Mayor could have been his first name. Did a town the size of Nowhere really need a mayor? I didn't think there was ever any election. I seriously doubted Mayor Handsome's last name was Handsome, though, and if it was, why wouldn't we call him Mr. Handsome? He insisted we always refer to him as Mayor Handsome. Like I said, weirdo. I had the sneaking suspicion he had given himself this name, though I found it entirely unsuitable. He stood behind the counter, rubbing his beefy hands over his belly, which was seriously straining the buttons on his way too small cowboy shirt. I was always on full alert for one of those shirt buttons to bust off and come flying at my head. Then I would be forced to chop it midair like a ninja to protect myself. That would be awesome. Mayor Handsome lifted one hand to the giant cowboy hat on top of his head and adjusted it. Diapers? He asked again, with a strange accent, either Hungarian or Romanian or Slovakian, or maybe Transylvanian. No one knew for sure where he had come from, and I guess no one cared. I doubted most of the population Nowhere knew where Hungary or Romania or Slovakia were. No, I said, do you have any digging supplies? What digging supplies? Shovel? It took me a moment to figure out what a shovel was. A shovel. I honestly had no idea what woman used to dig for gold in a mine on the verge of total death-inducing collapse. Yeah. Mayor Handsome led me to the shovel he had in the tool section, picked it up, and turned it over. $12. I put it back. Do you have anything else? I only have $7. Hand trowel is cheap. He pointed it out. Only $4, but not good quality. What you need it for? Just a little gardening. Ground too hard. Handle will break off. You have the good soil at home. I shook my head and picked up a hammer and a chisel. How about these? That would be very strange way to plant garden. He adjusted his large boot-shaped copper bolo tie, but I let you have those for only $4. I think I'll take them. Anything else you need? Mayor Handsome carried my stuff to the counter. Diapers? Corn remover? No, I'm just going to get some snacks. I grabbed a box of Twinkies because nothing makes energy like pure sugar. All my grandma had at home was canned food and bologna. I'd definitely take some bologna when I got back. Grateful I wouldn't be drinking it through a straw, thanks to Rossi. I heard the door's bell ring and saw Jesse Navarro enter the store. We nodded at each other in that cool sort of way. Hey, Gus, he said casually. Hey, Jesse. Jesse and I had been good friends, best friends actually, up until last year. We didn't have a big fight or anything. I guess you could say we drifted apart in 7th grade when he started hanging out with the other Mexican kids who went to Nowhere Elementary. They didn't tell me I couldn't hang out with them or anything, but when the people you're trying to be friends with constantly speak Spanish in front of you and you don't understand Spanish, you start to feel a little insecure and left out. Plus, every time they laughed about something, I was sure it was about me. It didn't help that they also pointed at me while laughing and sometimes said my name. Now I hung out with this kid named Louis, who was actually really annoying, but it was better and safer than being a loser who ate lunch at a table alone. Even though Louis only talked about himself and his obsession with his creepy pet centipede, even though Louis spit all over me when we talked about his pet centipede, he had some kind of salivation disorder. I knew I shouldn't look down on him for it. He obviously couldn't help it. but anyone would get tired of getting showered with pizza-flavored spittle on a regular basis. Yes, I've tasted it. I don't want to talk about it. Hey, Mayor Handsome, did you get those school supplies in for my pops? Jessie asked. Oh, yeah. Is in de back? Mayor Handsome left us standing at the counter alone together. Then he peeked through the swinging doors that led to the back of the store. Don't come back here. Jessie and I both nodded. Everyone in Nowhere knew of Mayor Handsome's strict stay away from the back of my store policy. There were a lot of theories floating around about what was hiding back there. Dead bodies, so predictable. Drugs, gold, a giant collection of girly teapots. You getting chickenpox? Jessie took a step back. I touched one of the spots on my face. No, I had a meeting with a jumping chola. Jessie scowled. I guess I don't have to ask who arranged that meeting. I guess not. I felt angry at Jessie. Angry he no longer had to bear the brunt of Beau's torture. Ever since he had started hanging out with Ramiro's group, he was no longer one of Beau's targets. I guess I should have been glad for him, but I was only resentful at the moment. Why aren't you at the races today? I had better things to do. Jessie used to race up until about a year ago, when he had a particularly bad crash and completely killed his dirt bike, but luckily not himself. It would take him forever to save up for another one. If I can't be down there racing, I don't really have much interest in just standing there, watching like some loser. I cringed at his words. I mumbled. Oh, I didn't mean. I know what you meant, I snapped. Jessie cleared his throat. What are you getting at, Gus? He picked up the hammer and chisel. What's this for? I shrugged. Nothing. He threw them back on the counter with a loud clang. Fine, don't tell me. I suddenly had the urge to tell someone, anyone, what I was about to do. What if I died? No one would know what had happened to me. And I knew Beau wouldn't tell anyone since he was the one who had sent me there. I'm going into the mine, I blurted out. Jessie's head tilted back. What mine? Dead Frenchman, I said, much lower this time in case Mayor Handsome could hear us. Jessie lifted the chisel. I know we haven't been close this year, Gus, but I didn't think it would drive you to suicide. I snatched the chisel from his hand. I'm not suicidal. I have to go. Why? Never mind. No, now you have to tell me. I made a deal with Beau Taylor. It's a long story, but he has Rossi's bike, and I can only get it back for her by going into the mine. Why is it your problem? It just is. I was too embarrassed to tell him how Rossi had traded Loretta to save my life. Well, maybe not my life, but at least my mouth. And certainly other essential body parts, intestines, certain holes. Mayor Handsome returned and dropped a large paper bag on the counter. Let's see. We have 10 packs of markers, he said, rifling through the bag. Glue sticks, pencils, paper, and 5 little scissors. You pronounce scissors like skizzers. Jessie's dad taught first grade at Nowhere Elementary, and every year he would expect that most of the kids would show up with at least a few missing supplies. Some of the poorest kids showed up with none at all, and the Navarros spent their own money to buy the missing school supplies. Even though Jessie's mom also had a full-time job working at the scrapyard, I knew it was a big sacrifice for them. Mayor Handsome pulled out a couple of bucks out of the bag, and I put D's in for free for D kids, for girl. He held up a pink backpack covered in poodles wearing tutus. Jessie and I glanced at each other. No kid at Nowhere Elementary, not even a first grader, would be caught dead wearing that backpack, because if they wore it, they would very likely end up dead. And for boy, Mayor Handsome held up the other backpack, which was camouflage. That one was acceptable. Mayor Handsome stuffed the backpacks into the large paper bag and pushed it across the counter to Jessie. And you tell your pops. I get a good discount, and I only charge him costs for D's. Really? Jessie said, hugging the bag to his chest. Of course. It's for D kids. Mayor Handsome turned to me. You ready to check out, Gus? Yeah, I said. Jessie stood next to me, the giant bag of school supplies in his arms, while I paid for my pitiful supplies. I should have been buying a suit of armor, but I hadn't seen any on Mayor Handsome's shelves. Not that I could have afforded one anyway, had it been in stock. Hey, Mayor Handsome, I said as he handed me my bag. What's gold worth? I mean, like a piece of gold. What's that worth? Mayor Handsome removed his oversized cowboy hat and scratched at his gray hair, somehow styled in a perfect slick wave despite the weight of the giant hat. How much gold, Gus? Like a gold cow? What? The gold cow? I shrugged. I don't know, like a piece. Like a piece of gold toot? Gold toot, I asked. Gold toot. He tapped his giant, glaringly white front tooth. No, I shook my head. I mean a regular little piece of gold, like an ounce. Mayor Handsome continued scratching at his head, and I hoped he didn't have lice. Someone always had lice in Nowhere, like this was their favorite place in the world to hang out. A dink few $100s? How big a piece would that be, I said. Mayor Handsome opened the cash register and pulled out a quarter. Maybe like this? I nodded and smiled. Great. So not too big then. Why you want to know, Gus? You found some gold? Where you find it? He slapped his beefy hands down on the counter. Just curious. I took a step back. Thanks for your help. I waved to Mayor Handsome. Jessie followed me out of the store, a look of concern on his face. I stopped on the front porch and turned to him. How are your parents anyway? I missed Jessie's family. They'd always brought some sense of normalcy to this town. Some sense of not everything in the world being so messed up all the time. Jessie shrugged. Okay, I guess. Busy. Busy with what? Jessie stared at me. Why do you suddenly care about what's going on with me? Am I not allowed to care? Jessie just stood there, his bushy eyebrows furrowed, his lips pursed. I shook my head. Fine, later. I walked down the porch steps. You shouldn't go, Gus. I stopped and turned around. Jesse still stood on the porch.